Welcome to Love You Longmont. We have a special treat on the studio today. You know, I've never met a photographer who didn't say, but what I really want to do is work for National Geographic. We have a young man here today who does that. So Andy Mann, thank you so much for being with us. You live in Niwot.
Thank you, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here. I do. The Longmont Niwot community is my home.
That's so incredible. Obviously, these fantastic photos we have were not shot in Niwot. Where were these?
It's true, this is my home, but only for about 6 months a year. But these two particular pieces that are behind us are from a place I shot on a National Geographic assignment to what's called the Selvagens Islands or Savage Islands.
Ooh.
And it's about 200 miles off the coast of Western Sahara, Africa. And we're there to sort of do these dive surveys and document a place that can hopefully become protected. And these two, this is the same wave that broke about 15 minutes apart and very differently. And I really love these because it shows the power of the sea and also sort of connects me to my mountain roots in a lot of ways. So I've chosen those as sort of our bookends.
Our
here.
intro.
Yeah.
Well, I know that a lot of people got to see your work at the firehouse, and that's where I saw these wonderful things. But you have also got a video of this expedition at the Savage Islands. Let's look at that right now.
It all starts with a bird and migrates to the sea. Every story has a lead character, and in this story, it's not something from the sea. It's funny how these stories unfold. This little bird ends up protecting the whole archipelago. In 1971, the Portuguese government realised that the bird numbers were so low that they were on the verge of being unsustainable. So the government bought these islands in a great act of leadership to protect the birds, and of course it did. Making that boundary to protect the birds, one of the default mechanisms and sort of spin-offs was that the fish became protected. And now we know more about the fish, and the Portuguese government know more about the marine life here. They've realised that this archipelago needs a true, internationally recognised, robust and enforced marine protected area.
Andy, that was beautiful. I think before we go any further, we're going to talk about some of the incredible places you've been.
Okay.
Let's find out about you. How did you come to be a National Geographic photographer?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, my roots as a photographer, well, let me back up. I'm from Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.
Those are your roots.
Very rural. And I grew up as a fisherman, and I ended up in college studying fisheries. I worked on the Chesapeake Bay doing conservation work. And in 2003, I moved with my buddies to Boulder. And because we were out of college, we're looking for adventure. There was mountains here, there's great music here, there's a great community here that we were looking to get out of our hometown. And within a few months of arriving, you know, I met a buddy that took me rock climbing, and I fell in love with it right away. Just the challenge, it's a great way to be outside and interact with nature and sort of challenge yourself. And I fell into it and fell into a group of climbers that I spent the next 3 or 4 years with, traveling around the country and learning the sport of climbing and also starting to document it. So I met a photographer who was already on the scene shooting rock climbing. His name was Keith Ludzinski, and we've since become best friends and started a production company together. But he taught me a lot of the ropes of it, and I loved his lifestyle. And I thought I would be pretty good at this. And so I started shooting rock climbing. And from there I was on the road taking photos for 3 years or something. So just in my truck documenting the sport. I got a job at Climbing Magazine. From there, I started to work with some bigger editorials like Outside Magazine and work with editors who were looking for a little more than just a climbing image. So starting to learn portraiture and landscapes and how to tell a story through photography.
Right.
And so that adventure background really opened a door for me at National Geographic because those assignments are very adventurous.
Yes.
And
did you take a portfolio to them, or did they call you up and say, Andy, we've seen you?
I was hired first as an assistant who could do photo but also video. And I was assisting a friend of mine, Corey Richards, who's a very well-known National Geographic photographer now. But we both came from the climbing world as well. So because we worked together, he had a foot in the door. It allowed me to get a foot in the door. And since then, I've been able to work on several projects for National Geographic since.
So there was a little luck, but tremendous talent.
Tremendous luck, little talent.
I don't know. I'd love to talk about some of your expeditions.
Yes.
Like one that intrigues me is the Uapu Islands.
Yeah. So a lot of my adventure photography, the best stories require sort of the best access, and oftentimes that's the most remote places in the world. So I'm lucky to know a lot of climbers and a lot of athletes who are drawn to places where people don't normally go. And that's the kind of access that you're really looking for as a photographer.
Sure.
So a National Geographic explorer named Mike Lebecki, he's one of the legends of climbing, invited my friend Keith and I to Uapu Island, which is in the French Polynesia, a place called the Marquesas Islands. And it has these beautiful jungle spires that come out of the island. And it's just a thick, really bad weathered jungle, wet, muddy sufferfest of a place.
No.
But
gee, sounds fun.
Mike's just crazy enough to like really be drawn to a place like that. And this particular tower was beautiful, and the north face of it had never been climbed or even attempted before due to its difficulty and its location. And so we spent 16 days in total climbing a first ascent up this muddy jungle tower and learning a lot about ourselves and how much we could really suffer along the way.
Yeah.
But in the end, I look back at that expedition and laugh, about like the good times and the great stories and the great images and video content we were able to get. And we ended up summiting about midnight during a tropical storm.
Oh no.
And it was scary, but a good lesson in climbing and adventure for me.
I think one thing that people worry about when they jump off into the world of photography is how do they ever support themselves? You have clients on
I have clients. So the business of photography is something that I learned, the hard way.
Yeah.
The art of photography came pretty natural to me. But the business of it is tricky, especially in this environment of social media, and there's different distribution platforms, and you sort of always have to be on the front of that wave.
Right. Literally.
Yeah, to market yourself appropriately. So a lot of what I do is I take these remote adventure expeditions and I find a commercial client that fits, because commercial clients, let's say like an outdoor brand like the North Face, they're looking for an authentic story, and to market their clothes and to market their sponsored athletes. So I work with, if we have an idea for an adventure, like we want to go here and climb, I'll start sort of finding an appropriate athlete and who's ready for an objective like that, and then start working with their sponsors and their brands, and then have them essentially fund the expedition, and then you get this real authentic documentary, like journalistic story, but it has a commercial backing and distribution.
So that was Dell Computer and Goal Zero
for the Uapu Island.
Right.
That was Dell, and they wanted us to go test what was called the Dell Rugged, which is a laptop computer that they had mostly contracts with like military and service policemen, but we said, hey, let us take it to the jungle It'll get wet, and we'll edit our photos on it. We'll use it to find our routes and around. And they love the idea of sort of branching into a new market and to test their computer. So it's all about sort of finding the right client.
Sure.
And when you do it, it works great because these expeditions are expensive to get to, and you spend a lot of time in the field.
Yeah.
And so when you can marry those two things, it's great, and it's sort of what keeps my business going.
The next one you're going to is one you've been to before, and that's Greenland.
Greenland.
What are you going to be doing there?
So that's my favorite place in the world. I think it's the
Really?
most beautiful place in the world. Yeah. We'll be going back with Mike Lebecki, who took us to Uapu, and we'll be trying to climb the first ascent of a big 4,000-foot unclimbed granite wall.
So now you're not going to sit back and just photograph it. You also have to climb it.
I'll be climbing. Yeah,
With all of your equipment on you?
with everything.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we'll be actually living on the wall in what's called a portaledge.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just following Mike and this climber, Ethan Pringle, up a world-class first ascent climbing objective in a place that no one's seen before.
Oof.
And the beauty of Greenland is not only the unclimbed potential, but it's also, we'll be diving with polar bears and filming walrus and narwhal and working with the local Inuit and trying to tell a story of both maybe the climate that's changing there and also an adventure story.
Were you ever attacked by anything like that?
I've never been attacked
That's good.
by anything. I spend a lot of time in the water with big apex predators and sharks and photograph bears and maybe I'm lucky, but I also have a healthy respect.
One of
for
the
animals.
places you're going is you're going to photograph the oceanic shark,
Yes,
and that's on Cat Island. Now,
Cat Island in Bahamas. So this is a project that I've been very lucky to be part of for 3 years, and it's working with the oceanic white-tip shark, which is a critically endangered species of shark. And the only real place in the world that you can find them is off this bank off Cat Island in the Bahamas. And this team of scientists are we're catching the sharks, and with a mobile ultrasound, we're seeing if they're pregnant. We're bringing them up to the boat, flipping them over, seeing if she has pups.
oh,
And if she does, we'll put a satellite tag and track her movements and try to find where they go to give birth, which is a big
Right.
unknown.
yeah.
Because if you can protect those pupping nursing grounds, you can help protect the species that's 99% declined. But I get to spend a few hours in the water every day with the sharks, before we catch them, we get them around the boat.
Right.
And that's something I love to do is being in the water with sharks.
So you're a good scuba diver, obviously.
Yeah, I'm
You'd have
a
to
good
be.
scuba diver and becoming a better free diver. And so these sharks are at the surface, so I work off just snorkel and free diving
With the camera
with the camera.
strapped on. I can't even imagine that.
Oh, it's so
Seems like
fun.
you would be unbalanced.
Everything's pretty buoyant once you're in the
Yeah,
water.
that's true.
So, yeah, it's pretty easy. It's easier to work in than the side of a cliff.
Oh,
That's for sure.
I suppose that's true. There's not a falling place you fall
That's
down.
a good point. Yeah.
One of the places you're going to is the Antarctic Peninsula.
Yes.
And that's a you've been there, right?
I just got back from there. So
Tell
that
us
was
everything.
That was such a special treat for me. So the organizer of this expedition was a guy named Paul Nicklin, who is a world-famous wildlife photographer, a real hero of mine. And his partner, Christina Mittermeier, is also a very big influence in my life. They're both conservation, polar, natural history photographers. And so this was a big objective for National Geographic. They hired Keith Ludzinski, who was my early mentor, and myself to go down and document the Antarctic Peninsula for 30 days.
Wow.
Shoot a TV special, shoot a magazine article, and help tell the story of the peninsula and how it's changing. And the peninsula itself is up for a vote this year to be protected as a marine protected area and sort of move some of the inshore fishing that's happening off, protect penguin colonies, leopard seal colonies, and nesting birds. There's just a beautiful array of wildlife there. And it's some of the most amazing footage we've ever captured, and some of the images are really great. And so our editor at National Geographic. Her name's Sadie Corrier. She's laid out the story, and it should go to print later in the year or first of next year. And so we're looking forward to that.
What is it like living there, though? I mean, you have to stay there.
We were living on a boat,
which
was
so
actually
bad,
pretty
I think.
nice.
Yeah.
Good accommodations. And within the peninsula, there's these nice calm anchorages, and you can find these little leaves from the wind, and it's calm. But we had to cross what's called the Drake Passage back to South America when the expedition was over. And that's notoriously one of the worst passages in the world as far as rough seas and rough weather. And we hit it at just about the worst storm.
Oh, gosh.
So it was basically 3 of the most miserable days of my life, just sort of strapped into a bunk and, not really eating or getting up, just sort of holding on. Those 4 really rough days. I don't get seasick, which is such a blessing, but I was scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were afraid maybe you would...
We would capsize or something would happen. You know, it's kind of that scene out of the Perfect Storm movie, right, with George Clooney. And it's dark and the waves are 40 feet high and you're just in this boat in the middle of nowhere. So I think just the isolation was scary for me, but it's kind of like the adventure to Uapu. You know, I look back now and I can tell the story and show the images and show the video and get a reaction, which is what you want as a photographer, you know. So.
A reaction of people who see it.
Yeah, and see it, and they're scared or inspired. There's some emotion attached to that, and so sometimes I have to go through that emotion as well, in order to document it.
Are you ever just sort of heartsick about the devastation to the ecology?
Yes, it's one of the more difficult things is to capture our changing world, and it's one of the most important ones as well. You know, so in Greenland we'll probably see sickly, starving polar bears and things, and that's easy to sort of turn a blind eye to, but that's important that we photograph it as well.
Do they let you get close to them? I mean, how far away from all of this wildlife are you?
I like to get close.
And what do you mean by close?
Like by proximity of, I really want the viewer to feel the intenseness of this animal and stuff. And I've learned that with working with guys like Paul, where, you know, a long lens shot of a polar bear or any wildlife has been done. Like, it's not National Geographic standard. You have to get in there. And when you open that page, you need to be able to feel the power of that animal and see its fur and feel its breath.
Wow. And
so you get in there pretty close, you know, and do the best you can to be safe and have respect. And that comes from being on location for a long time and working with an animal or a group of animals for several days at a time and sort of work your way in. That's amazing.
None of them ever turned and looked like, ooh, I'd like to eat you, Andy Mann?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Which is
good.
Yeah, if I do feel threatened or I sense a change in their behavior, I'll get out of the water or I'll get back on the boat. Or, I feel like you can sort of read those things if you're really sort of tuned in. Animals, they'll let you know before they come right at you generally that they're being upset or bothered.
Well, let me ask you a technical question. What do you do about charging your batteries? I mean, everything you're shooting is digital, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's a nightmare.
Is it?
So I usually, I work with a company called Goal Zero, and they make in-the-field solar products. So I bring panels and little cells that I charge from the sun, and I'll charge the batteries that way. If there's a power source nearby, I also bring a lot of batteries just in case.
I bet you do.
Yeah. But we're lucky that there's these mobile solar charging stations, and I bring those in the field. I
suppose eventually they'll invent boats that have big chargers built into them or something.
They do. The boats are nice. They have actually power outlets. They're just running off an alternator and a generator around the clock. So when you have a boat, you have power.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's places like Greenland where you're dropped off for a month that you need to sort of rely on the sun.
I can't even imagine. One of the things I found really interesting are some of your black and white things.
Yeah.
There was a black and white campaign you did for Black Diamond.
Black Diamond, yeah, they're one of my favorite people to work for. They're a real core climbing company. And they sort of support those climbers, you know. And they had a great vision to shoot black and white for a number of years, all their campaigns. and put us in amazing locations like Patagonia and the desert Southwest to capture their athletes doing what they do. And that was a great freedom as a photographer to have a style guide up front that says, we're looking for gritty, black and white, real images. And then at the end, I think they got a nice deck of photos that really tell that story. And for me, it was really fun to shoot in black and white.
Well, it was also nice to have a sponsor.
And it was nice to have a sponsor that had a vision, which is very nice.
Yeah, that's really neat. One of the things that I also found interesting was seeing in your portfolio photographs of fish.
Yeah.
You love music?
I love music, yeah. So I'm a big sort of acoustic, bluegrass, Americana musician.
You actually are a musician yourself?
I am.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so I used to play a lot more than I do now, but I also love inspirational or improvisational music, and bands like the Grateful Dead and Fish were big influences on just my childhood, teen years, college years and things like that. And so when the band Fish comes to town, they play a big end of the summer tour show in Denver, a big festival. They hire me to go shoot it. And that was an honor because I've got to know the band a little bit and spend some time backstage and on stage during these shows. And it's fun to shoot things a little bit out of your element. Sure. But I know the music so well that it was really natural for me to like get in there. I know when the changes are. I know the music so well. I kind of know where to point the camera.
Are you up on the stage?
I get on the stage, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, which is really cool. Yeah, but another thing is they liked my work because I can tell a broader story.
That's it.
They said, hey, most photographers, they just sit in the pit right under the stage because we give them access. And they shoot up at the band the whole time. And I move around, so I'll leave what's called the pit and battle the crowds and shoot people dancing and shoot from the back of the stadium and try to tell a broader story, which they liked.
How candid is the band with you?
Oh, I mean, I hope they even know who I am. I get a little time with them, but it's just an honor to be in their presence, yeah.
Oh, that's really neat. Let me ask you about one that you just recently finished, and that's your downwind voyage.
Yes.
That's different, too.
This one was super cool. So I was working with a surfer named Kai Linney, and he's a prodigy, Hawaiian prodigy surfer. He's sort of pioneering what's called the foil board, and which is where the surfboard, he rides underwater currents and waves you can't even see, and he goes up on what's called a hydrofoil.
Oh my!
And this was for Red Bull, the company, when they had this idea.
Which gives you wings, if I correctly
recall. Gives you wings, exactly.
Right.
And this was a great one for me because it was adventure-based, but it had a conservation sort of tie into it. And so what Kai wanted to do was hydrofoil, and he's a big kite surfer and longboard surfer, and he wanted to use all his boards and do all the passages between the Hawaiian Islands and arrange beach community cleanups at each place he landed and took off from. So
wonderful.
The community came out. We'd spend the day at sea, and Kai's just breaking passage records after records, and we'd get there and we'd put our cameras down and we'd clean up the beach and all the plastics, and then we'd move off. So it was one of those projects that was a lot of fun to work on.
But didn't you have to surf to follow him?
I was in a boat.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you weren't even steering the boat yourself?
No, I'm just shooting. We're just sort of pacing Kai for safety, and also to be able to photograph and film all these crossings he was doing. And I love it when action, adventure, and sort of conservation come together. And then obviously to have a commercial client that will fund something like that is the perfect storm in a lot of ways.
And that was Red Bull.
That was Red Bull, yeah.
One of the things I think people worry about is getting their equipment wet. Are all of your cameras waterproof?
They're not.
They're not?
No.
Oh, no.
Well, I have an underwater housing.
Oh, that's good.
So when I go physically in the water, it's protected.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just try to do your best to keep them dry. But I've kind of sacrificed a lot of gear in my day. I'm the guy that spits on his lens and cleans it with his shirt and puts it away without a lens cap.
Yeah.
But that's not the best practice.
No. But it's
I don't advise that.
Really?
However, if you're in the moment, and I'm just about getting the shot and telling the story. And once I get in that zone, the equipment becomes a tool and less of what it is, which is a fragile piece of glass.
Yeah, it is. You know, I think a lot of people hear us talking about this and they think, well, I have to go to the Savage Islands, or I have to climb a mountain to have an adventure. I wanted to show a little bit of video. I went with a woman named Lauren Kovsky, and she has a company called Rivers Path, and she takes people on canoe trips in the
Cool.
St. Vrain. So I wanted to say, we went through the St. Vrain and I shot this with my iPhone, and then we'll come back and talk just a little bit. Andy, I think perhaps Colorado is known for adventure. So
Yeah.
if people are beginning to think about maybe becoming photographers themselves or just capturing this beautiful scenery, what would you advise?
You know, I think that there's two things I would do as a beginner. One is, I think photography and story, it's all about access a lot of times. So find people that are doing cool things. Often it's scientists, often it's adventurers. Sometimes it's just people in their jobs, and get access to a cool story. And the other thing is work with your photos. So if you want your kids to get in photography, I recommend a Polaroid, because they can hold it and they can put it on the fridge and they can share it.
Oh, fun.
A lot of times it's tough for people to shoot and then see their photos on the back of a camera.
Especially in the sunlight.
Yeah, if you're gonna shoot digital, get a program like Adobe Lightroom, get a computer, offload those images, edit those images,
Oh, good.
upload them to the web, learn how to use them. And it's different, you can't really grab them much anymore, but if you can print them even at Target or something, learn how to process the image, because then you're gonna spend the most time with it and you're gonna learn. You know, a lot of people shoot and don't play with their images. It's like, how can you become a good cook if you don't eat what you're cooking? And so
Good point.
I just advise those things.
These images behind us, have you done a lot of manipulation on them?
Not manipulation, but I've done some like color correcting. So I'll enrich the blacks or bring out some of the colors and contrast and shadows. And so I like to play with my photos. I think it's a really fun part of the process.
Oh, that's neat.
They never end up too far from the way I shot them,
Oh,
but
that's
they're a
good.
little more lively.
You know, when I first saw these, I thought these were whales.
I know, some people just see a mountain.
Yeah,
And I'm
or
like,
a
"That's the
mountain or a
ocean."
whale.
Or yeah, I've heard whale on this one. Yeah,
Yeah. And how close to these images were you?
really close, like just about 10 feet away.
Oh my goodness.
Sort of staying in the small boat and sort of
can't
watching what's
even
happening.
Well, Andy, you're such an adventure. This is so exciting.
Thank you.
I feel really lucky that we got a chance to see these and to talk to you.
I do too. Thank you so much for having me on this program.
And you're on your way where next?
Oh, I am on my way to Montana to work in Yellowstone for a bit, and then I'm off to Greenland.
Oh, so fun. And I
Yeah.
know you'll have a great time. Thank you so much for being with
Thank
us.
you
Thank
so
you for bringing
much.
your beautiful photos. And thank you for joining us on Love You Longmont.